At 6, former Chancellor Rishi Sunak leads the race to be the next Conservative leader and our Prime Minister after the first round of voting. There are now just 6 candidates with enough support to stay in the race. Nadhim Zahawi and Jeremy Hunt have been knocked out. Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss came second and third. We will have all the details from Westminster, also on the programme. Protesters in Sri Lanka storm the Prime Minister's office as demonstrations over the cost of living intensify.
The security forces, the police, all the armed guards, they're nowhere to be seen. Another public building here in Sri Lanka, which is now being occupied by the people.
Another train strike is announced. Around 40,000 rail workers will walk out for one day on July the 27th. Forest fires in France and Portugal as heat waves grip Europe.
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, a French inquiry points the finger at authorities over the Champions League final chaos in Paris and finds Liverpool fans were unfairly blamed.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt lead the way into the race to become the next Prime Minister after Conservative MPs cast their votes in the first round this afternoon. There are now 6 people left standing in the Tory leadership contest. Today started with all of these candidates still in the running. They needed at least 30 votes to stay in. Former Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt and the current Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi didn't get enough support and have been knocked out. The next round of voting will take place tomorrow. From Westminster, here's our political editor, Chris Mason.
The first moment of decision in determining who might be our next Prime Minister.
Mordaunt, 67. Sunak, 88. Truss, 50.
And who definitely won't be.
2 candidates will be eliminated, Jeremy Hunt and Nadhim Zahawi.
The Chancellor and the runner-up in the last Conservative leadership race out. Hours before, today's runner-up, the Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt, launched her campaign, and another cramped and sweaty affair with a spot of merchandise thrown in. A face that may not be familiar, but soon might become so.
Recently, I think our party has lost its sense of self. If I can compare it to being in the Glastonbury audience when Paul McCartney was playing his set, we indulged all those new tunes, but what we really wanted was the good old stuff that we all knew the words to. Low tax, small state, personal responsibility.
What do you say to the vast majority of people listening to this morning who've not come across you before and perhaps wonder whether you have it in you to be Prime Minister in just a couple of months' time? What do you say to them?
I think that I am one of the best prepared candidates in this contest. I've served in a huge number of ministerial positions. I've also served in the private sector. I've worked in the public sector.
One of Penny Mordaunt's supporters is the man beaten to the Conservative leadership by David Cameron 17 years ago. You've seen a few of these kind of launches. I'd want to see yourself.
Absolutely. I can tell you how nerve-wracking they are. I've seen dozens. That was the best I've ever seen. She's a real star.
Morning. How are you?
Down the road, at the same time, another contender, former soldier Tom Tugendhat, saying he'd prioritise much more money for the military.
When we're talking about defence spending, we've got to be absolutely clear that we will never put the safety of our country in doubt because of bean counters or spreadsheets.
Who will replace you, Prime Minister? Who has your vote?
The big question, followed by the one he won't answer. But Boris Johnson reckons whoever replaces him will have the measure of Sir Keir Starmer.
Any one of them would wipe the floor with Captain Crasheroony's snooze fest, Mr. Speaker.
The Labour leader teased Mr Johnson about his approach to life after Downing Street.
Finally, he can throw off the shackles, say what he really thinks, and forget about following the rules. I will be leaving soon with my head held high.
The The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss finished third in the vote today to replace him. Tomorrow, as MPs vote again, it's her turn to set out why she should win. So 6 candidates remain and one big question. What happens to those 43 votes allocated to the 2 candidates eliminated? Expect as soon as this evening a shift of allegiances and a remoulding of this campaign yet again. Let me share with you an assumption. Assumptions are dangerous, but the working assumption here at Westminster is that Rishi Sunak will get one of the 2 tickets to go into the final 2 to be decided by Conservative Party members. There is now a battle for that 2nd ticket between Liz Truss and Penny Mordaunt. And this evening, at least, Penny Mordaunt has the upper hand.
Chris Mason in Westminster, thank you. A state of emergency has been declared in Sri Lanka after tens of thousands of people took to the streets and stormed the Prime Minister's offices in protest at the island's collapsing economy. It follows weeks of unrest, with protesters calling for President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to stand down. He's now fled the country. But the Prime Minister, who was left in charge, immediately gave the police and security forces full authority to restore what he called normalcy, which infuriated people. Sri Lanka's economy has collapsed, with food inflation running at 80% and transport costs up more than 100% because of record fuel prices. To make matters worse, Sri Lanka's tourism industry collapsed during the pandemic, meaning it now has no foreign currency reserves to pay for imported goods. Our correspondent Rajini Vardhanathan is in the Sri Lankan capital, Colombo. Rajini.
Well, here at the protest site in the capital, they're celebrating, as you may hear, what they describe as a victory for people power. The man so many blame for this country's economic woes, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, has fled the island. But in a development that we just got in the last hour or so, he issued a statement where he, rather than actually resign, as he promised he would, he made the country's Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, acting president. Now that just leaves more uncertainty when it comes to this island's political future, an island which is already in deep turmoil.
Their target heavily guarded. Their mood determined. As news spread that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe had just been made acting president, crowds gathered in front of his office, one of the few government buildings not yet occupied by protesters.
Well, there's a tense standoff now outside the Prime Minister's office in Colombo. Protesters lined up all the way along this avenue, and on the other side here you can see the security forces who are guarding this office, and protesters are chanting that Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Prime Minister, is a thief. They don't just want President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to step down, they want the whole political class to leave, and they want to change.
And this is how they're pushing for that change. A mass movement born out of economic hardship, sending a message to those in power.
We don't want violence, and we don't want to hit or something to that Prime Minister who's trying to be a president right now. We only want, please resign.
But it didn't take long for security forces to use tear gas and water cannons.
But as you can see, they didn't manage, and there's a large security presence there. Some protesters still trying to climb in. And just over the gate, you can see inside there now just how many members of the security forces are in there. And we can feel the tear gas on our skin now. A lot of people here have been tear gassed, but they're not giving up. They still want to get inside. Are getting closer now. There's a standoff there close to the gates now. Protesters moving forward, they are not giving up. And you can see up there, police, ambulance.
a breakthrough. Outnumbering and overpowering the police. Yet another protected building overrun by protesters.
Well, this is quite an extraordinary moment. After hours of trying to make their way in, they've finally done it. Protesters have pushed their way through the gates of the Prime Minister's office, and now everywhere. The security forces, the police, all the armed guards, they're nowhere to be seen. Another public building here in Sri Lanka, which has now been occupied by the people. It really is quite a moment.
But where does that moment go next?
Why did you come here today?
To help my country. I love my country, so I want to come to here and help my country.
But who can save it? As they celebrate, Sri Lankans are still suffering. After taking government buildings, who do they trust to take power? Regina Vaidyanathan, BBC News, Colombo.
Rail workers will walk out on strike again on Wednesday, the 27th of July, at the height of school holidays. The ongoing dispute is over pay, conditions and jobs. The RMT union has rejected a new 4% pay offer from Network Rail, calling it paltry. Our correspondent, John Donnison, is at London's St Pancras. So a one-day strike this time, what impact will it have?
Well, for rail commuters just making their way home this evening, it's going to mean another day of pretty major disruption. After 3 days of strikes last month, this is going to be a 24-hour walkout, as you say, but it's going to be an extremely difficult day to travel on the trains. 40,000 workers going on strike. Now, it comes, as you say, after the union rejected a pay offer from Network Rail yesterday that would have meant 4% this year and a possible further 4% the next year. But the union's saying, look, with inflation running at around 9% annually, that would simply mean their workers were getting poorer, and they called the offer paltry, as you say. Andrew Haines, the chief executive of Network Rail, calling it frustrating, and the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps accusing the union of causing chaos and acting cynically to try and disrupt the Commonwealth Games that start in Birmingham that same week.
John Donnison, thank you. The DJ, Tim Westwood, is facing fresh allegations, this time from a woman who says they had sex several times, starting when she was 14. She says Mr. Westwood was in his 30s at the time and describes him as a predator. The woman is one of several to come forward with claims of misconduct and abuse after an investigation by BBC News and The Guardian. The allegations span a 30-year period starting in 1990. Mr. Westwood did not respond to a request for comment. This report from our correspondent Chichi Zundu contains distressing accounts of alleged sexual assault.
The Archers was a club in Vauxhall. Tim Westwood would be there holding his club night, so it was really popular. He had a show on Capital, which was a big deal.
That's happening Saturday night between 8 and 10 with me, Westwood.
We're calling this woman Esther. She says she was 14 when she met Tim Westwood. He was in his early 30s.
Then he got into ages. He was like, "How old are you then?" I said, "I'm 14. And he didn't look shocked or anything. It was, "Oh, okay." I said, "Can I get in next week?" "Sure you can." I think we exchanged numbers, and then I'd say it was a couple of months after that, he asked to meet up with me at Hammersmith Station and he'd pick me up from there. On the way, he was saying, "Oh, we're going to my house." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I don't have a problem with that." We had sex. I never gave consent, but I never said no either.
Now as an adult, how do you feel looking back on that period in your life?
Looking back, I feel disgusted, angry, upset, dirty.
I'm outlawed from most of the clubs in the West End because I play rap.
From pirate radio DJ to BBC Radio 1 star.
Welcome to the Radio 1 Rap Show. This is how Radio 1 get down in the 9-7.
With a well-known presence in clubs up and down the country and abroad, Tim Westwood has been a prominent figure in the music industry for more than 40 years.
I'm a big dog.
As part of our investigation, we spoke to 10 different women making allegations ranging from sexual assault and predatory behaviour to sexual activity with a 14-year-old between 1990 and 2020. Back in April, as part of a joint investigation with The Guardian, the BBC broadcast the stories of 7 women alleging unexpected and unwanted sexual touching and sexual misconduct against Tim Westwood. Tim Westwood strenuously denied all of those allegations, but he hasn't responded to any of these new ones. We asked Global, who own Capital Radio, if they'd had any complaints about the DJ during his employment with them, but a spokesperson said they'd let us know if they had any comment. Last week, the BBC revealed it had 6 complaints, one of which was serious enough to refer to the police, despite the Director General, Tim Davie, previously saying they'd found no complaints. Yesterday, he said the BBC was still investigating and would be publishing its findings in 2 weeks. Adding, we have no objective apart from to ensure everything is flushed out and we understand exactly what happened with regards to the BBC and also to do the right thing and any cases are looked at. At one point in his career, Tim Westwood was being hailed as the most influential figure in hip-hop across Europe. But the question still remains how someone with so much power in the music industry wasn't stopped. Chichi Zundu, BBC News.
Details of organisations offering information and support for sexual abuse are available at bbc.co.uk/action line, or you can call for free at any time to hear recorded information on 0800 077 077. And you can watch more on this story on the BBC iPlayer in the documentary Hip Hop's Open Secret, Tim Westwood. A French inquiry into the security issues which delayed the Champions League final in Paris between Liverpool and Real Madrid in May has blamed organisational failures, not the Liverpool fans, for the chaos. Riot police sprayed tear gas at Liverpool fans, including women and children. At the time, Liverpool fans were blamed for the trouble, accused of trying to use fake tickets. But today's report says ticketing cannot be considered as the sole or main reason. And it concluded that mistakes were made at every level. Well, our Paris correspondent Lucy Williamson joins us now from the French capital. And today's report reinforcing the conclusion that Liverpool fans were not to blame.
That's right. This Senate report really zooming in on comments made by the Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin in the days after the match, where he blamed Liverpool fans for the chaos. The senator says that was unfair and unacceptable, and it was an attempt, they said, to divert attention from the state's failures to prevent problems on the night. They said the authorities' approach to Liverpool fans was outdated. It was based on a vision of hooliganism from the 1980s, they said, and that the problems were actually caused by, as you said, a failure to plan, a failure to communicate, a failure to manage the situation on the night. They also highlighted problems that some fans had activating digital tickets, and they recommended that stewards be better trained. Those 2 issues are things that fans and staff have raised with us in the weeks since the match. The report concludes by urging changes to the way that France manages sporting events before it hosts the Rugby World Cup next year and before it hosts the Olympic World Games in 2024. The chaos at the Stade de France, they say, was a wake-up call.
Lucy, thank you. The time is coming up to 6:20, our main story this evening. 6 candidates remain in the Conservative Party leadership race after Nadhim Zahawi and Jeremy Hunt are knocked out. And still to come, we'll be in St Andrews at the home of British golf ahead of the 150th Open.
Coming up in Sports Day on the BBC News Channel, England.
Tomorrow, 8 million of the poorest people in the UK will start receiving some of the government living grant, in total £650, to help with soaring bills. Many, though, have been struggling for years. The biggest food bank provider is called the Trussell Trust. Back in 2008, when the financial crisis hit, they had about 20 food banks across the UK. That number has risen sharply Today, there are more than 400 food bank centres run by Trussell, which supply 1,300 food banks and distribution points where people can get supplies. Other charities and organisations are running food banks too, bringing the total to around 3,000. Our social affairs correspondent Michael Buchanan reports from Dorset.
Then we got meatballs, chicken pieces.
In the village of Sturminster Newton in rural Dorset, dozens of families stream in to buy heavily subsidised groceries. For a £6 fee, members can take home around £40 worth of shopping.
My electric bill has doubled and my fuel bill has doubled, and it's taken the food out of the cupboard.
Even if my husband was still working full time, we'd still be needing to use it, because the money he was getting wouldn't cover what we're paying out now.
An apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Many of those using the shop have jobs. They're cleaners, carers, but still they struggle.
Do you want some chicken nuggets?
Yeah,
do you like chicken nuggets? We've got employees in the area that literally are minimum wage, but rents are high. So a typical family unit, £1,600 a month coming in, rent £1,300. How the hell are you going to manage to feed your family?
Across the UK since the 2008 financial crisis, an increasing number of people have needed help to eat. In Dorset, there are now over 50 places where people can get free or subsidised food. Some opened during the pandemic, but demand was rising long before then.
When I first started, we were operating from a small church hall with a few volunteers.
The food bank in Poole was one of the first to open in Dorset in 2007 to help a small group of residents. But in this council area, the number of food parcels given out tripled in the 3 years before COVID.
People are referred to us by doctors, health visitors, and significantly the pastoral care workers in schools who identify the families that are really struggling in the area. And clearly there has been an increase.
In Poundbury, a new village built with support from Prince Charles, low-income households are not obvious, but low wages, as in many areas of the country, create hidden need.
Although there's a lot of places advertising jobs, they want under 25s for the jobs because you can pay them less, and people greatly in need of jobs are often pretty badly paid in this area.
Ministers say that a record number of jobs and steep rises to the national living wage have protected many from poverty, and that they'll give the poorest at least £1,200 this year to help with soaring bills. But the fear is that it won't be enough. Millions of people have been enduring a cost of living crisis for years, not just a few months. Michael Buchanan, BBC News, Dorset.
The energy regulator has ordered some energy suppliers to review the direct debits of 500,000 households, suggesting many large rises may not have been justified. Ofgem says it found some companies had doubled scheduled payments when prices had only risen by 50%. Let's speak to our consumer affairs correspondent Coletta Smith, who is in Wakefield. Explain more about this, Coletta.
Well, Sophie, we all knew that direct debit payments were going to have to go up because wholesale prices increased, because there were extra energy levy charges added on to cover the cost of those failed energy suppliers. The price cap, as you say, increased by 54% in that period. The question is, why did so many direct debit payers face a much bigger increase than that? Was it justified, or was it just energy companies lining their own pockets? So today we've heard from the regulator that the average standard variable tariff during that period increased by 62%. But in fact, lots of households have faced even higher bills than that. 500,000 homes have seen their direct debits double during that period. Now, it could have been that they were underpaying before. Perhaps they suddenly used a lot more energy during that period. But the regulator said they've got big concerns about the way 5 companies in particular have acted, the likes of Ecotricity and Utilita among them. Now, those companies have been in touch with the BBC today to say that they're cooperating with the regulator. But Ofgem have said that those firms have got 2 weeks to get their house in order, to explain why there was such a big increase in those direct debits, to make any repayments that customers are due, and potentially even make extra goodwill payments for those that have been out of pocket. We know that the energy price cap increase has been such a big stretch for so many households that actually adding any extra onto that, being overcharged, is simply adding insult to injury.
Coletta, thank you. The footballer Raheem Sterling has left Manchester City and is joining Chelsea on a 5-year contract. The £50 million deal is Chelsea's first major signing since the Todd Boehly-led takeover of the club. During his time at City, Sterling scored 131 goals in 339 games, winning 4 Premier League titles. Record crowds are expected at St Andrews tomorrow, the historic course known as the home of golf, at the start of the 150th British Open. But some of the world's top players who will be teeing off are caught up in controversy, among them past winner Phil Mickelson, who has reportedly been paid $200 million to sign up with a rival competition backed by Saudi Arabia. Now there are calls for those players to be banned from next year's Open, as our sports editor Dan Rowan reports.
The world's oldest golf championship is preparing for a historic milestone. But here at the spiritual home of the sport, the winds of change are being felt. The threat of the Saudi-bankrolled Live Series and the billions with which it's luring the top talent has dominated the build-up. Here at St Andrews, while the rebels won't be banned, the breakaway was today condemned. The man in charge telling me their future participation may still be in doubt.
There's no such thing as a free lunch. And you know, there is if you choose one path, you stay on that path. And if the game is fracturing, which it is a bit at the moment, we will look at how you get into the Open. We want the best players in the world to be playing in the Open, and we will look at those exemptions and those qualifications in the light of how the game is being played.
Others are even more critical. The great Tiger Woods, believed to have turned down $500 million from Live, suggesting the rebels had betrayed those who'd helped them.
They've turned their back on what has allowed them to get to this position. What these players are doing for guaranteed money. What is the incentive to practice? What is the incentive to go out there and earn it in the dirt?
With concern golf's being used as a sports washing tool, the established tours have banned those who have defected. But with legal action looming, rebel stars like 4-time major winner Brooks Koepka today remained tight-lipped.
Can I just ask you about Live Golf and what Tiger Woods said about you letting people down? Brooks, any response to Tiger Woods' comments at all?
Other defectors equally reluctant to comment, from Phil Mickelson
I don't know
to Sergio Garcia.
What do you say to Tiger Woods' comments about Live Golf? I don't even know what he said. About turning the back on golf. I don't know what he said.
As ever, Tiger Woods remains the biggest attraction in town, but as he bids for a 4th Open Championship victory, the sport of golf threatens to tear itself apart, and what the authorities will be worried about is a Live rebel golfer holding aloft the claret jug here on Sunday. This hallowed course has come to symbolise golf's rich history. Those behind the sport's new frontier insist it must evolve to flourish in the future, but rarely have the game's traditions felt so under threat. Dan Rowan, BBC News, St Andrews.
The Met Office has extended its extreme heat weather warning for England and Wales until Tuesday, with temperatures expected to reach the upper 30s. That heat is coming from the continent, which is having to deal with much higher temperatures. There have been wildfires in France. Hundreds of people have had to leave their homes, with more than 1,000 hectares burnt in the area south of Bordeaux. It's the second heat wave in as many months in France. Seville in Spain's Andalusia region hit 45 degrees Celsius today as parts of the country were on red alert for extreme heat. Temperatures could pass Spain's previous all-time record of 47.4 degrees, which was set last August. And Italy has faced its hottest June since 1800, according to meteorologists there. Temperatures this weekend are expected to rise to the 40s in many cities. Well, let's have a look at the impact here. Ben Rich is here now, and you can really get a sense of it on your weather map there, can't you?
Yeah, this picture really does tell the story, Sophie. This is where we have the really hot air at the moment. Confirmation of that temperature today in southern Spain of 45 degrees. Now, I'm going to show you what happens next. There's a lot going on this chart, but focus on this area here, an area of low pressure to the west of Iberia. The winds circulating in an anti-clockwise direction. As that low shifts northwards, it acts as a heat pump. It pumps that hot air northwards in our direction. The heat peaking around Monday or Tuesday, with temperatures likely to get into the mids to possibly high 30s Celsius. Hence, this Met Office amber extreme heat warning already in force from Sunday through to Tuesday. The heat could well cause some health problems and some disruption as well. Now, the highest temperature today was close to the south coast, close to 30 degrees, despite a band of cloud. Now, that doesn't look like much on the chart, but this is actually quite an important band of cloud. It's a weather front. Behind it, we're into some slightly cooler, fresher air for the time being. What it means is that tonight should be a little more comfortable for sleeping than last night. Last night, some of us held up into the 20s. Tonight, 10 to 16 degrees. And there'll be a few showers around across northern and western parts. Those showers during tomorrow will drift eastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, northern England. The odd one could get into North Wales, the North Midlands, maybe East Anglia through the afternoon. To the south of that, dry with some sunshine. In fact, southern England probably sunnier than it was today, but a little cooler. Scotland and Northern Ireland, 17 to 19 degrees. England and Wales, 18 to 27. Now, as we move into Friday, our area of high pressure to the south, this little frontal system racing in from the west, that will bring more cloud. Again, it'll bring some showers during Friday. This cloudy and showery weather moving southeastwards, a northwesterly wind. So again, something relatively cool. Those temperatures through Friday afternoon, 19 to 27 degrees. It's as we head through the weekend that those temperatures begin to climb, even across the northern half of the UK. Scotland and Northern Ireland into the middle 20s through Monday and Tuesday. Northern England, middle 30s, 35 quite possible there in Leeds. Further south, well, I'll show you the forecast for Heathrow as an example. 37 on our graphics here. There is a chance that we could get pretty close to or even break the all-time UK temperature record. So some exceptionally high temperatures on the way. Sophie.
Wow, Ben, thank you. And that is it from us. It's time now to join our colleagues across the nations and regions for the news where you are. Goodbye.